One of the more colorful characters in psychoanalysis was Erikson, who departed from Freud's ideas about sex and aggression and rather developed a model based on the crises that human beings have to pass through in their development. So let's talk about Erikson. Here's a picture of him. I've included a video interview of him in the course material if you want to listen to what he sounded like and his choice of words and what kind of person he was. He recently died in 1994. One of the things that's interesting about this post-Freudian theory was that Erikson, who coined the term, by the way, identity crisis, was he himself looking for his own identity. He had at least 3 pseudonyms he used. Erik Erikson was the one that he obviously relied on, but he was also called Erik Samuelson, Salomonson, and Erik Hamburger. He didn't know if he was Gentile or Jewish, but we did know is he was from Scandinavia, and he was really fatherless. So he had no formal training of any kind. He went on to teach and practice in the field of mental health for decades in the United States. He wrote prolifically about development and personality. And just as a little aside that might find interesting, he actually was a live-in tutor for a businessman in Vienna. And at the time, the businessman was actually himself in analysis and went to see Anna Freud. And when this man came home from his sessions, he would talk about it with Erik, and Erik was mesmerized by this whole process. So the long story short, he arranged for a meeting between Anna Freud and Erik Erikson, and she agreed, even without formal academic training, to teach him how to do analysis. So those days are long gone, by the way. There's no way you could practice without some kind of formal training. His post-Freudian theory extends infantile development to adolescence, adulthood, and old age. He suggests that each stage has a specific psychosocial struggle or crisis that occurs and contributes to the formation of personality. This is in sharp contrast to the struggle initiated by psychosexual forces, according to Freud. From adolescence on, the struggle takes the form of identity crises, a turning point in one's life in which may either strengthen or weaken the personality. Erikson regarded his theory as psychoanalytic, but Freud may not have. His theory emphasized the importance of life cycle approach to personality and placed more emphasis on social and historical factors than ever. He was unsure of his identity, spent most of his life searching for his identity of his father and his own past. As I mentioned, he befriended Anna Freud, became her patient, and she also her training partner. He married had 4 children, including one with Down syndrome. He lived in the United States, and in fact, the documentary or the short news item I included shows him living in the United States and with his wife, who's still alive. He did psychohistories, historical psychological evaluations on people like Mahatma Gandhi from India and Adolf Hitler. One of his most famous books that's really worth reading, it's a classic in psychology, is called Childhood and Society, in which he explicates the 8 stages. The ego is different for Freud and for Erikson. While Freud believed that the ego is insufficiently developed in healthy people to reign in the id, remember that was a biological force, even though its control is still tenuous and id impulses might erupt and overwhelm at any time. Erikson held that the ego is a positive force that has created a sense of self-identity called I. He defined the ego as a person's ability to unify experiences and actions in an adaptive manner. So this is not unconscious. He identified 3 interrelated aspects of ego: body ego, the experience with our body, the way we feel the way we see the physical self as different from other people. The ideal ego is the image that we have of ourselves in comparison with established ideals. It's responsible for our being satisfied or not satisfied, not only with our physical self, but with our entire personal identity. And then, of course, ego identity, the image we have of ourselves in a variety of social roles that we play. You can see Neo-Freudians drifting away from Freud, from this whole idea of sex toward social and cultural contexts. Society has a profound impact on the development of the child and the ego. The 8 stages of psychosocial development extended Freud's 3 more stages. He believed that the ego develops throughout the life, various stages, according to an epigenetic principle. This principle implies a step-by-step growth of fetal organs, one level building on the other, and at a predetermined rate or a fixed sequence for most people. At every stage of life, there are interaction of opposites or dialectics. Conflicts between syntonic, which is harmonious, and dystonic, which is disruptive elements. And those have to be kept in balance. The conflict between dystonic and syntonic elements produces ego quality or ego strength called basic strength. Too little basic strength in any one stage results in a core pathology for that stage, which is usually the opposite of the basic strength. We'll go through these in a minute. Erikson referred to the 8 stages of psychosocial development without losing sight of their biological underpinnings. Events at earlier stages do not cause later personality development. Ego identity is shaped by the multiplicity of conflicts and events, past, present, and what you anticipate. So this is very complex. You don't get stuck in one stage and continue to not develop. During each stage, as a particular beyond adolescence, personality is characterized by identity crises, a turning point, a crucial period of increased vulnerability and heightened potential. So here are the 8 stages. Infancy, of course, the conflict is trust versus mistrust, and that's up to a year. In early childhood, it's from 1 to 3 years. It's autonomy versus shame and doubt. You notice we didn't talk about oral or anal fixation here. It's about whether or not I can maintain myself, or for that matter, go to the toilet successfully, or do I feel ashamed? During the 3rd stage of play age from 3 to 6, it's initiative versus guilt. This incidentally is when kids start school, especially in Western culture. Can I produce and make friends, or am I going to feel guilty and isolated? School age is 6 to 12. It's industry versus inferiority. Lots of boys at this point get left behind because they develop a little slower than girls do. And of course, the basic issue is competence. Adolescence is where he departs, or will depart, from 12 to 19. Remember, this is where Freud thought people stopped growing. It's identity versus confusion. A resolution is fidelity. Early adulthood is from 20 to 25, intimacy versus isolation. And of course, the resolution is love. Am I going to learn how to get close to somebody, or am I going to feel isolated? Adulthood is 26 to 64. Generativity versus stagnation. Do I grow and give back, or do I hoard and just retire and not grow, stagnate? And old age is 65 and beyond. Do I maintain ego integrity, or do I end up living a life of despair? And of course, think about people that you admire that are older, that you you probably typically admire the fact that they're integrated, that they have interest, that they're still going, that they really push themselves. No one wants to end up in a nursing home. But here's the thought. Maybe there is, in fact, a 9th stage. You'll notice the ceiling is at about 65, so most people only lived about that long. The average life expectancy is well into the late 70s and early 80s nowadays. So maybe, in fact, there is advanced old age with different issues. Remember, this was done in the 1940s, so it's been almost 80 years of no adaptation of this schema. So it's just something to think about. When my wife and I were first married, we had a friend who was 105 when she died. And I asked her one time if she would do anything over, if what she would do over, and she told me unflinchingly that she wouldn't live that long. And the reason that she explained why was she lost everyone. So old age, especially seeing your children and your grandchildren start dying, for her at least wasn't a pleasant experience. Some of the methods that Erikson used included anthropological, historical, sociological, and some clinical methods to study people. His psychohistories were studies of individuals and collective life with combined methods of analysis and history. So while not trained as an academic or a clinician, he advanced the idea that there's a life cycle and that development doesn't stop when you're a teenager, that you develop right on into cradle and grave to grave, which opened the door up for other developmental psychologists.